And we're live. It is Monday. It is the 28th of July. It is the year of our Lord 2025. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why is Shane Harris missing from the picture? And the answer is simply that he's making himself a cup of coffee. You may be able to hear his espresso machine in the background. Chill out, he'll be back in a second. And I know what else you're thinking, which is, why are there three separate cactuses in Holly's frame such that I can't even make out her face behind them? And the answer is, we're getting to that, but there's something we have to do first.
Do you want to do it's in stereo now,
No,
Ben.
no, 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 no. We're not. We're saving that
Oh,
for your, because Collie's going to take over the monologue today,
oh,
um, and explain the apparent proliferation of cacti. But there's something we have to do first. We have to honor the great Tom Lehrer, who died yesterday at age 97. And one of the things that he did 3 years ago, 2 years ago, before he died, is that he released his entire life's work as a musician and a satirist and put it in the public domain. And he put it all up, all the recordings, all the sheet music, all the lyrics, up on the a website, and said he retained no intellectual property rights in the above, which means that I can perform as many Tom Lehrer songs on this show as you want, which is probably none, but you're going to get
It's at
one.
least one.
It's at least one. And it is a little gem he wrote in the early 50s that is about nothing, but I think is one of the most perfect pieces of, I don't know, satire, or he used to be obsessed with writing these little perfect um, uh, send-offs of types of songs. And this was his send-off of the sentimental missing her love song, and it's called I Hold Your Hand in Mine. I hold your hand in mine, dear. I press it to my lips. I take a healthy bite from your dainty fingertips. My joy would be complete, dear, if you were only here, but still I keep your hand as a precious souvenir. The night you died, I cut it off. I really don't know why. For now, each time I kiss it, I get blood stains on my tie. I'm sorry now I killed you, but our love was something fine. Until they come to get me, I shall hold your hand in mine. There you go. Tom Lehrer, dead at 97. Check out the Blue Sky thread by the NSA mathematician who found an Easter egg that Tom Lehrer left in a paper at NSA in the 1950s when he worked there during the Korean War. Um, a joke that was not discovered until the first Trump administration. Um, and it's a great story. Um, Holly,
Fun fact, by the way, that song was cut out of the original version of Silence of the Lambs.
really? Yeah.
No.
No. It's certainly possible. You could imagine Hannibal Lecter singing
Yes,
it.
I didn't
Yeah.
even know that was in his repertoire. You learned something on this show.
Look,
Never mind.
I mean, somebody, the estimable John Schwartz, former New York Times reporter, uh, posted Blue Sky yesterday that, you know, finding out that somebody is a Tom Lehrer obsessive who knows uh, Tom Lehrer songs is one of the shortcuts he used to use to knowing you were going to be lifelong friends with the person. It is correct. The guy was the greatest wit in the English language since W.S. Gilbert, and the only person who could write papers for the NSA and write songs for the electric company um, about, and it's just an amazing man. And he dumped it all in the public domain. So record TikToks of videos of yourselves singing these songs. They stand up remarkably well. Holly, why are there 3 cactuses and a snowman sitting in front of you? You're muted. I muted you because you had a lot of background noise. Now I've unmuted
fine.
you.
I said I first must observe that this looks like a cacti version of that SNL skit, The Californians, where they're all like crowding into the frame. So
I also love that the cactuses are slightly different heights.
yeah,
They're not.
I'm gonna get to that actually. They're all slightly different, in fact. But first, I feel like we need to be treated to the in stereo now intro. What do you think?
I think that's clearly accurate.
Well, this is going to require some coordination on my part because I have to turn both of them on and then I have to like put.
Well, I will just say in advance of that, the sun is shining.
TV, a Berkley revolution in morning television.
A little
You
off.
are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a fucking revolutionary feature,
We're going to work.
revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, and there are many, is that every now and then, once every 97 years, when Tom Lehrer dies, I will actually perform a Tom Lehrer song. And another one of the revolutionary features is that we can have a distinguished guest like Shane Harris coming on to talk about a very important story that he's written, and the only intelligent story you're going to read this year that involves dogs. And we can defer conversation with him with such inanities as singing and cactuses. Holly, I still want to know the cactus story.
Okay, so first of all, I have come to acquire all 3 cactuses, which you will note there are 3. Okay, so the full cactus
I only see
files,
2.
the full cactus files have been released. And the full truth has come out, and there are 3 cactuses.
Oh,
There is
there's only
not a
2.
resurrected
Ask
cactus.
Shane. There's only 2 cactuses there, right?
There is not a resurrected cactus. There are 3 cactuses here. And
How many cactuses do you see, Shane?
I don't see cactus.
Yeah, see, so the whole thing is
he sees
mythological.
character, not cactus. So anyway, so I did a daring clandestine operation this weekend while Ben was at the cabin in the woods, and I broke into his home and I stole the cat. Well, I didn't steal them because they were mine, right? But I did an Entebbe Israeli raid on Entebbe style raid on the house. I confirmed that there is no resurrected cactus. Ben is a fraud. I think we all knew this, but now it is confirmed. This is the original cactus who is dead, although I still have some hope of his resurrection. And then let's see. This is the cactus that Ben purchased to commit a fraud upon the American public, both to cover for his murder of the original cactus and to start his new religion in worshiping a resurrected cactus. There are 2 cactuses, cacti, whatever. Ben is a fraud. I think we all knew that, but it is confirmed. Now, this cactus is still a bit of a mystery because this cactus was in my home when I got home from my trip with a note claiming that I'm not sure what it was claiming, frankly. The thread, I lost the thread a little bit. But I don't, someone placed the cactus to commit another fraud or to frame my dog. I think that my dog had destroyed the cacti, which my dog, as we all know, is extremely well behaved and would never do anything like that. So now we have 3 cacti on the show. 2 of them work. I've recorded the same vocal, and although it is very difficult to get them to play in concert, that'll be the new intro, I suppose. But so the remaining mystery, which I welcome sleuth detectives online, is first of all, what is the story with this third cactus? As we said, the simplest explanation is that my friend Tammy, who stayed in the house while I was gone, thought it was very funny and it's part of her joke. But that's too simple. And we don't like simple explanations because they're boring. So what is the real explanation for the third cactus? And second of all, the other intriguing thing is all 3 of these cactuses are essentially, I would say, the same product, basically. They're all made in China, and yet they're all slightly different. Like you can see that they're different. Okay, one of them's darker, the knit is different, and so I'm just intrigued. Like, how do you think these all came from the same factory in China, who then changed their, how they're made, or do you think it's 3 different factories, or like what do you think is going on with these 3 slightly different cacti? So that's the assignment for the Greek chorus. They don't have to do it today. They can work on it, but I want to hear some theories.
Well, I just want to say that the Council of Nicaea has just declared you a heretic. Clearly, is only one cactus. There's from 3, there is one. We are crack cactus Trinitarians. There appear to be 3 cactuses, but really there's only one cactus, and only those who see the truth can understand that there is only one cactus, and all else is heresy. All right, Shane, you have suffered through
Enough.
13 minutes of my singing and Holly's babbling nonsense about
It
cactuses.
was a privilege, as always.
Oh,
And yet you have written a story that I think is has a distinction in the first year of the Trump administration, which is that it is the pettiest thing the Trump administration has done. And by
that's quite
petty,
a statement.
here, I don't mean the worst. I mean, it's not AIDS babies in Africa. It's not, fire destroying the rule of law or anything. I just mean it's the pettiest. And I want you, no jokes, just walk us through what you've reported. And
Okay.
Holly, please keep yourself muted when you're not talking because we're getting quite a hissing from your end.
So, the cactuses are cats. So about 2 years ago, James Clapper, who folks who are watching the show will probably remember, was the director of national intelligence in the Obama administration, and at the time, probably one of the longest serving intelligence officers in the history of the United States. So,
And just for
legendary.
context, how old is Jim Clapper?
He's currently 84. He retired from service at the end of the Obama administration. Important context as well. He was one of the 3 leaders of the intelligence community that was sort of overseeing the creation of the intelligence community assessment into Russian interference in the election, which is back in the news lately. So big legendary figure. You know, Jim Clapper is to the intelligence community what Steven Spielberg is to the movie industry. You know, it's kind of an outsized personality, big influence. Anyway, 2 years ago, Jim Clapper, who is a great dog lover, decides to sponsor a puppy through a nonprofit that helps place service dogs. So dogs for the blind, dogs for people with PTSD, and this particular dog actually tested very well on tests for being what's called a canine detector, meaning that it's a bomb sniffing dog. So dogs have great sense of smell. This one proved really, really adept at sniffing out explosive devices. So think suicide vests, car bombs, those kinds of things, bombs hidden inside packages. And the dog was selected by the CIA from this nonprofit to go through another round of training with the CIA and eventually become a bomb sniffing dog for the agency, which was great for Jim Clapper on a number of levels. I mean, one, he was the longest serving one of the longest serving intelligence officers, had run the intelligence community, so he had a lot of respect and a lot of history with the CIA. And it was kind of a poignant element as well because Clapper had named the dog Susan after his late wife, who had, in addition to being by his side through his whole career, was herself a former employee of the NSA. Don't know if she knew Tom Lehrer. Maybe they were there at the same time. And was a great lover of animals, had volunteered at an animal shelter, was a great dog lover. So there's kind of all of this perfect symmetry. Susan, the bomb-sniffing dog, is going to go work at CIA.
Named for his late
Named
wife.
for his late wife, and he adopted the dog with the intention, I think, of doing this in her honor and her memory. So Jim Clapper, 84 years old, enjoying his retirement, getting all ready to go to the dog graduation ceremony to see Susan and other canine detection animals graduate at a facility, a CIA facility in Reston, Virginia. The day before the ceremony, gets an email from the nonprofit that sponsored the dog and says, we've been contacted by the CIA. They know that your name is on the guest list and they are scratching you from the list. You may not come to the ceremony to see the dog graduate. And the reason for this was given that Jim Clapper is someone who President Trump has named in an executive order as stripping his security clearance for his perceived sins, which we can talk about, and as such is not allowed to set foot on a CIA facility. Mind you, this is not at Langley, Virginia headquarters, and the event is unclassified. You can go on Facebook and see pictures of this event. And there are people smiling with dogs. There are people smiling with dogs who are in their
Anybody
wheelchairs.
holding
Who
up
look like this is their...
classified information?
No classified information
No.
was disclosed. I don't think the dogs were given the nuclear codes. I'm
There
pretty
could
sure.
be people in attendance who are in a signal chat that discusses the classified information.
There might well be. And maybe even, a signal chat about classified dogs. But as far as I know, Susan's existence is not classified, though the work that she is doing is sensitive and potentially very dangerous. So, at the end of the day, this is a story about the Trump administration deciding to basically reach out and try to punish an 84-year-old man who spent 50 years of his life in the service to this country by forbidding him to go to a graduation service for a dog named after his dead wife. This is the depths to which we have sunk in 2025.
Okay, so I have a few clarifying questions. First of all, I want to say about Jim Clapper, he is like the nicest man in the world.
Very nice man.
And the last time I saw him, he hobbled up to me and gave me a big hug and told me he really valued the work that Lawfare was doing. And so I am you can buy my loyalty real cheap, and I am a pro Jim Clapper guy. Do you agree with me, Shane, that uh, there is nothing in the executive order that forbids Jim Clapper's presence at a dog graduation? There's not like a provision keeping him from federal property, right?
There's not, and I believe there's an executive order to that effect that applies to some people, but my read of it is that it doesn't explicitly apply to Jim Clapper.
All right, next question. Uh, do we know how Jim Clapper reacted to this? I mean, like, was he upset? Was he amused? Was he angry? Um, you know, like one could imagine many different reactions to such a thing
Yeah.
from an old hand like Clapper.
Yeah, it's my understanding that he was not amused, and that he was both hurt and also deeply concerned. I think probably for two reasons. One, for all the reasons that we're concerned, that it demonstrates a kind of level of vindictiveness and strange adherence to an interpretation of an order, not even the explicit order itself, that's resulted in something so silly, frankly, being done. And I think the other, probably concern because he is being personally targeted in this way. And while it doesn't have any negative consequence directly for him, a lot of people, including others who were on that list of 51 former officials who had their security clearances stripped, many of whom I know very well, are worried all the time about what secondary consequences are going to come from that. Will they be unable to find employment? Will people find out where they live and come harass them? So I think that to some degree, it's a little bit in that category of, Clapper just
Ben, you're muted, and Shane is frozen.
There are downstream effects to what the
I am now
president did.
unmuted. Shane is frozen, which is unfortunate because he was mid-sentence. Let's assume he will be back momentarily.
He will be. I just want to say I also know Jim Clapper a little bit, mainly because we have a very close mutual friend in common, and he is very sweet, a very sweet person. And also, I know was devastated by the loss of his wife. Like, really, I mean, they were, soulmate types, for sure. So very sad.
All right. Andrew and his yellow lab. Andrew, we've got a real echo on you, so I've got you muted, but I'm turning off the mute now. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Cool. So, yeah, I'm using my prerogative as a yellow lab owner to call in for the first time. Certainly very troubling as a petty thing to do. There are so many petty things that we've cataloged over the last several months. It didn't take me too long to figure out that this was going to be the subject of today's show. So, yeah, I think it's pretty nuts. The other one that came to mind that's also related to security clearance cancellation was Mark Milley having his portrait removed from the Pentagon, pretty much on day one by Pete Hegseth. So that's, right of a kind. And then the list is endless. Harvard's targeting, my pet theory is it's related to the Pritzker family and the fact that Penny Pritzker is the senior fellow of the Harvard Corporation, and they kind of muscled him out of a New York real estate position he had, the Grand Central Hyatt. And he swore revenge in 1993 and is now sort of enacting it, obviously. So yeah, this one is as you say, it's not people like dying in Africa, but if I wasn't able to attend my lab's graduation from a canine training, she would be very sad, and I would be very sad too.
Yeah, so I want to say it is precisely because the stakes are so low that the pettiness is so extreme here, right? It's a it it's not hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars at stake, like all it as with Harvard, right, or lots of business as with the law firms. This is all about hurting one man's feelings, and 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 also about sending a message to the workforce, um, which is when you send an email like that to Jim Clapper, you have a pretty good idea that it's going to get out or that it could get out, and you want it to. We will do everything in our power to make your life miserable and your little dog too. Shane, you are back. You are not frozen, and you were mid-sentence when you cut off, but I'll be darned if I remember what sentence you were in the middle of.
I think it was you're asking just to know, we probably have covered it, like why would Clapper be concerned? And one reason is for just, I think just like you just said, Ben, it's that, if you're going to punish me over, something as insignificant as a dog, but do it in order to be vindictive personally, to send a message. Another thing about this too is that I think it also demonstrates, kind of this weird, blind adherence to these rules. Like somebody lower down the chain clearly saw this guy's name on a list and sort of knew what to do. And, and nobody thought to say, hey, maybe we should, bring this to the attention of somebody higher up to see if we could make an exception in this case.
Or just not bring it to attention. See, this
Or
is
just not do it. Yeah, exactly.
okay. And I just had a conversation with a friend in a different agency who's still working for the government. And we were both saying the real disappointment of how the career officials, like the in positions of some authority, but like the career officials have just folded and just are not even, they're not even trying to push back or maintain any sort of normalcy. They're just folding. And so like when I read your story, Shane, I thought of just all the, again, like career people that I know personally who, I would have hoped would, like, just again, you don't say anything. You just let it go. Nobody's even going to probably notice. The director's not going to, like, nobody's even going to notice that he's there. And they just sort of preemptively, it's like the Tim Snyder thing, like obeying in advance, right? And this is exactly to me, a great example. So when I read your story, that's what I thought of. It was like, okay, it's petty Trump, but more than that, it's indicative of a culture of just folding among career officials who could have just like let this go.
Yeah. And no one would have known about it.
Yes.
Maybe a picture of Jim Clapper next to the dog shows up on Facebook. He probably would have stayed out of the picture from based on pictures I've seen. But, and it's also, not that you would ever expect anyone in the Trump administration to admit a mistake, but, when I bring it to the CIA's attention, they did not comment for this story. There's no statement forthcoming that says, we have the utmost respect for General Clapper, but we have to follow. There's nothing like that, by the way. And I'm actually, I will say, I am genuinely surprised that they did not give me a statement that was glib and made fun of the situation, because I think that is probably how senior officials at Langley wanted to respond and didn't.
So I have a question for you, Shane, and then a bureaucratic question on the same theme from Holly. For Holly, do we know anything about internally how this decision was made at CIA?
My my understanding, and I don't have a full picture of this, but my best kind of piecing it together is that there was in fact a bureaucratic kind of mechanism here, which is that if you're going to a CIA facility, and in this case, it was not the main facility in Langley, it was a training center or a facility in Reston, Virginia. Even though it's unclassified, there's like a list of people who are going to be at this event. I mean, the same way that if I go to a briefing at CIA headquarters, back when they used to allow me onto campus, um, and it's an unclassified briefing with a director, my name is on a list and I'm cleared, and you might have to give your social security number and they run you through a database, that kind of thing. No more than in any other, like if you went to the White House, or something like that. So at some point, Jim Clapper's name shows up on that list because the service academy from which the CIA plucked the dog would have put his name on it as a guest. And so somebody is reviewing the names and sees James Clapper and knows who that is. And that this then kicks in, the process of removing him from that list. What I don't know is whether or not somebody sees the list and says, Jim Clapper, hey, here's a great opportunity to screw the old man, or whether someone says, Jim Clapper, let me check. That's weird. Someone named Jim Clapper is on a no-go list. I mean, you would know who Jim Clapper is if you work at the CIA. So that piece of it I don't know, but it appears from my reporting that he gets alerted, the system gets alerted to him basically because he shows up on a list that goes to the CIA for clearance.
And do you know whether at what level the decision was made? Okay, there's a executive order stripping him of his security clearance. We interpret that to mean he can't set foot on campus. Is that I mean, somebody has to make the decision that means screw the dog, screw the, keep him off. I would think just as a matter of comedy to a prior DNI, that decision at the final level would have to be made pretty high up, no?
I would think so. And I would think that a low-level person who sees this would probably feel, well, I don't really have the authority to say, right? I'm certainly not going to strike the DNI. How do I know that somebody higher up the chain on the 7th floor didn't put him there? My understanding is that this, before the event, I mean, it rose to the level of people who have access to the director, that there were people who talked to the director on a regular basis who knew about this. And certainly, the director was aware of it at the very least after I inquired, and I kind of got the feeling that he was aware of it before I inquired too.
All right, so Holly, talk to us about your understanding of, as a bureaucratic matter, how something like this happens every day, but what would be, in your imagination, the sequence of events somebody notices, presumably at a lowish career level, who's dealing with protocol and stuff, notices that Clapper is on the list, make up the chain of emails or calls that then happens, with the caveat that all of this is, speculation, but what do you imagine must have happened?
Well, first of all, any employee at any level can submit a person to come in the visitor database. Like everybody, you're having a retirement party for a colleague. You're the organizer of the retirement party, and you want, a former officer who was close to them, wants to come in for the party. Like GS 10, when, Susie can put in that person in the visitor database. So I assume it all started with whoever was charged with organizing the event, probably within the Office of Security, who under which the police office, our police officers and the dog handlers and all those people would be under. So some employee was charged with putting together this event, yeah, so they probably put in the list of people that from the dog agency, and then presumably, obviously, it's approved by someone higher up. My experience is with the visitor database is I mean, obviously I'm sure they run it through various, you give them some basic information, they run it through various, but it's pretty quick pro forma. You have to give some sort of justification. But it doesn't even have to be elaborate. My impression of the process is it's not like, getting into, like, I don't mean to imply that anybody can just walk in, but it's not like you hear back pretty quick that your visitor is approved, even within like a couple hours. And, it's not like a whole security clearance process.
If you ever have a chance to go to the CIA, go, because you can then go to the CIA gift store, which is really,
I don't know. I think it's overrated. But
no, it's the coolest gift store in
products
Washington.
are very poor quality, I have to say.
That's because you work there, Holly. For us outsiders, it's so neat.
No, the
Here's
CIA gift
my
store
water bottle that I got there.
is awesome, and and you can get a snowman there.
Yeah, that was a joke. Someone got me this years ago. My best friend, actually, for my birthday. Anyway, it's I think it's overrated, but that's okay. The products are poor quality. But anyway, please don't sue me, CIA gift shop. But yeah, so it goes, so obviously, but I would think for an event like this, like, again, it would be a pretty mid-level person approving these, basically just doing a very, pro forma criminal, like run it through a couple databases. I don't know, like, I would assume he might be flagged in our system. I don't know under what auspices that would be flagged.
You'd flag him like enemy of the people. What's the flag for the former DNI who's out of political favor right now?
This is also part of the weird thing about this is that, and maybe somebody will correct me on this if I'm wrong in the chat, but the executive order that names Clapper is the one that takes the security clearances away from those 51 people who signed the Hunter Biden laptop letter. And there's nothing in that order that speaks to, you being barred from the grounds of a federal building, which, the CIA offsite facility, would be. But I mean, there have been people who've raised questions about, for those people who are named in a separate order that my understanding is does do that. Well, does that mean you can't go to the post office? Can you not go to the Social Security Administration or to the VA? It's being confused here. So somebody made the decision, I think, and Holly's right, it would be handled through the security office, to say, yeah, put Clapper on the do not enter list.
Yeah, so losing security or stripping someone of a security, like, I don't have, like, I lost my security clearances, but I would be like, I could, in fact, someone invited me to an event just the other day. I was out of the country, so I wasn't able to come. But like, maybe I'd be barred. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But I would think that, I wouldn't be barred. That's different. Now, if you're marched out of there, like you're fired on grounds of security, then I would think you would be flagged in the system, and that would sort of come up and you wouldn't be allowed to come in. But just losing your security clearances is pretty normal.
I mean, Shane doesn't have a security clearance. I don't have a security clearance. If you hear a dog whining in the background, that is Cleo the dog whining in sympathy for Susan the dog. Yes. Cleo is outraged by this story.
Yes.
All right, so let's say there's some eagle-eyed mid-level security office manager is reviewing this list, and he or she says, oh my God, there's an executive order that strips Jim Clapper of his security clearance that might have implications for his ability to obtain to attend here, that person presumably does not make the decision him or herself. So what would happen then?
I mean, I would think so. My interpretation of this is that, well, okay, so there's two possibilities. First of all, it's possible that the director or someone very high up, when the executive order came down, did flag, like just took it on upon himself to basically flag all these people and like, we're not letting. So that could have been done at the time just by the director. Obviously, I'm purely speculating. But assuming that that was not done, I mean, I would think there were multiple levels of people that, again, could have let this go. And so, but what I've heard from people, not just in my agency, former agency, but in other agencies, is that there's just this climate of fear and second guessing about pretty much everything that's going on. And so I would think either someone at some level had a hand-wringing moment where they're like, oh my gosh, this could get me into trouble if I let this go. And they sort of said no, or they used it as an opportunity to prove loyalty to enhance their career prospects, that like, hey, I'm flagging this, like, look what a loyal, soldier I would be. Either way, it's like a cultural phenomenon within the agency that's, I think, very troubling. But it's possible, again, that the director could have preemptively flagged all of these individuals anyway. I mean, I've been told by, like, even in the first Trump administration, I had heard unofficially, again, speculating, that certain people, were not welcome to come in.
All right. So I
Not
want to
officials.
here's my question, Shane. When did all of this happen relative to John Ratcliffe's, I don't want to beat around the bush about it, lies about the 2016 IAC and the so-called criminal referral to the Justice Department? So, like, situate this for us in time.
Right. So the ceremony is in late May, and I believe it is May 23rd is the date of that. So that is more than a month before Ratcliffe releases this, so-called CIA note, which is the lessons learned about the ICA in 2016, and it's notably, the statements that Ratcliffe issues to go with it, which do not at all match what says in the document. So that is sometime after. Now, what's interesting about the timeline is that in May of 2025, the same time as this thing is going on, that is when Ratcliffe directs the note to be written. I don't know if that's meaningful in terms of him barring him, but yeah, I mean, all of this happened before Ratcliffe kind of like launched these barrages at people, including Jim Clapper, and calling them by name people who had engaged in, serious malfeasance. The executive order naming Jim Clapper obviously comes, 2 days after or so Trump is inaugurated. But when all this is happening, does John Ratcliffe know that a document is coming that's going to implicate the work of Jim Clapper? Yes, he absolutely does, because he ordered it. And whether or not he had a nice, spicy tweet in mind at the same time, like the one he issued, I don't know. But that is the sequence that he.
So it's not concurrent with, but we should understand it as, he is, even as he is declaring war based on lies on the substance of Clapper's work in a highly substantive fashion, he is also doing this petty shit.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasize that aspect, right? That this is not it's not simply a petty act, though it is a very petty act. It's a petty act situated against a a pattern of conduct that he's trying to discredit this man's work, which is, by the way, valid work. It's not, this is not debunking a conspiracy theory. This is debunking debunking truth in favor of conspiracy theories. And, I'm going to get you and your little dog too. This is the and your little dog, or maybe not so little dog, part of it. Anyway,
Just to add one piece on that I've just observed, and I think, is that I don't think that John Ratcliffe is upset that this story has come out. I think John Ratcliffe is probably glad that this story has come out because it contributes to this kind of ongoing theme of frankly, I mean, I don't know if dehumanizing is too strong of a word, but what is happening.
I renounce Satan and all his works, right?
Yeah, and
We
what's happening
renounce the Obama administration and the intelligence community and all their works.
Right, yes, exactly. There is this demonization that is going on of these individuals in the MAGA base. And, it's merely one slice, but I think it's a telling slice. If you go on X and you look at the reactions and the comments to my story, it's people celebrating this and like F Jim Clapper, screw him. I would have done more. I mean, I haven't seen anybody taking shots at his dead wife, but it wouldn't surprise me if somebody has. And I think that's the point. I mean, it's sort of like, it's to kind of to bring back, the succinct phrase that my colleague Adam Serwer at The Atlantic coined some years ago: the cruelty is the point. That is the point. It's to be petty and to see that you can, in fact, get away with treating an old man who gave most of his life to his country this way because you have now created in him a demon. And so everything that he did before doesn't count and was probably all just malicious conspiracy to do evil works anyway. And so, I think this is all part of the story that people in the administration are trying to tell about these folks and to belittle them. Again, they didn't comment for the story. I have a strong suspicion that probably somebody restrained him from doing that, but that the comment would have been exactly what you expect.
Yeah. So super petty at one level, super unimportant, and yet illustrative of an entire ambience, right? And not unconnected to super important elements of the environment that we're dealing with. Okay, I want to ask you about your reaction when you heard this. Was your first reaction to burst out laughing and say, "Oh my God, you can't be serious"? Or was your first reaction, "Well, that's very troubling"? Like how do you react to this as an intelligence reporter?
It was the former. It was to laugh out loud and be like, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." And and the second very quick reaction to that is like, of course that's what happened, right? I mean, it's just this understanding, but it's just so ridiculous and absurd. And at the time I heard it as well, from someone who heard it to be clear, like this trickled down, like this was making its way in the grapevine of people who know Jim Clapper. It was just like, honestly, like, really? Is this what they're spending? Somebody had to expend a not insignificant amount of time and focus on this particular task of taking him off a guest list. And I am pretty confident that time could have been spent better doing important things.
Watching paint dry, for example.
Yeah, or keeping actual security threats out of government buildings, maybe. You
I don't
know,
think anybody's doing their best work right now
I don't
in the
think anyone's
government.
doing their no, they're not. But it was just, I mean, also just like a lack of surprise and, um, but also understanding that it's one of those stories that, I mean, in a weird way, it's not unlike the Signal story, is that like when you explain it to somebody, they totally get it because it's like you can imagine, you know, if you love a dog, or you don't have to be a dog lover to get this. There's nothing complicated about this story, right? And so that was kind of my, my first reaction to it, and uh, I just it's kind of, to me, it's like you said, it's illustrative of the ambience, and it's pathetic that this is
Right.
actually what, the leadership of the Central Intelligence Agency is even spending a second thinking about this is a problem.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, and it's just, again, in the larger context of, as I said before, across the government, what I'm hearing of just, again, career people, professional people who know better, just folding and preemptively trying to cover their ass and comply and prove their loyalty, which is really troubling. But then also with this, the whole context of I cannot believe that we are revisiting yet again the 2016 Russian interference. This is mind blowing for me. It has been so extensively documented by multiple investigations, including, I mean, to me the most compelling one, just on a political matter, is the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
Also the most
Released
thorough
by
one.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah, it is hundreds of pages. Yes, released by Marco Rubio. It is hundreds of pages. It extensively documents not only Russian active measures, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, hundreds of contacts between people with ties to the Russian government and people with ties to the Trump campaign. Just, and none of it comes from the Steele dossier. The Carter Page thing is I don't mean to minimize the sort of bad work there on the Carter Page FISA, but it's extraneous to the overall story.
Yeah.
And I just am incredulous that now we're going back to 2016 again.
Well, it's because of Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, and if you look at and just looking at the timing of this, Ratcliffe puts out the CIA note and his comment around July 2nd, and I'd have to go back and really inspect the timeline, and I don't think that the Epstein story had like jumped into the full-blown forest fire that it is now for the administration, but it was like a campfire that was burning and was about to jump over, right? And yes, Ratcliffe did initiate this process back in May, and he has long had a particular bugbear about the Steele dossier and about fights over it and whether it should go in the ICA. But what then really makes it clear to me that all of this is now about distracting from Epstein is when Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, who has been on very thin ice and has not been in the president's good graces or a member of his inner circle, clearly has found a way to make herself useful, which is that she does her own version of this and then, declassifies the so-called Nunes memo and just lies baldly about what is in that memo even. And then is invited to the White House to stand in front of the press in the press room and repeat all of these false statements. And this is absolutely now about distracting from the Epstein controversy. Even the president gets that because when he gets asked about Epstein, he says, "Why are you talking about Obama and the coup?" Which is the exact language that Tulsi used. I mean, this is not difficult to figure out, right? But, they have like this sort of long-standing weird complaints, not really rooted in fact, that people in the Trump administration have had about the ICA as a way of getting at Brennan and Clapper and Comey, and all of that stuff that's now nearly 10 years old. And I don't think the MAGA base probably cares all that much about. I mean, it was a decade ago, is now finds new life because it is this, easy political distraction and conversation changer.
Yeah, I think I think that's right, and it's an easy distraction and conversation changer because it has been set up so consistently over so long a period of time as the kind of urtext of
Yes.
all Trump witch hunts, right?
Correct.
So,
It's
you
the
know,
OG witch hunt. Yeah.
it's the OG witch hunt, and Trump knows that by invoking it, he can recalibrate, reset people's orientations. If Epstein is the same as the January 6th, is the same as uh, the classified files matter, is the same as um, the first impeachment, is the same as, Russia, 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 right? It's all one uh, witch hunt, as he likes to say. And I think that's a really important, it's nonsensical from a Earth One reality oriented vaccines are real, climate change are real, is real. Um, uh, there's such a thing as science point of view, but it is an important theological component of the last 8 or 9 years, and they know that that the Russia, Russia, Russia thing can really operate as a reset button for a lot of, though not all of, but a lot of the base. And it does seem to work. I think um, it is worth not being too contemptuous of it
Yeah.
as a tactical matter.
Well, one way you see it working immediately and uh, uh, is sort of right wing podcast hosts, the Charlie Kirks and the Benny Johnsons of the world, picking up the Tulsi Gabbard stuff right away and running with it more fiercely than they did when Ratcliffe did the sort of light version of this, 3 weeks earlier. And saying it's even like, I mean, Dan Bongino put out a tweet, I think yesterday, hinting at more to come about something without even saying what it was. And people are quickly picking that up too. I mean, this is
He's been
absolutely.
rocked to his core by what he's learned, he tells us.
No, he didn't tell us what he'd learned, right? Exactly. But I mean, this is my point is yeah, exactly. You can see the way that once the administration kind of drops this information out there, they don't even have to turn to their allies and say what to do. They know what to do. And what I find just so amazing about what Radcliffe and Gabbard have done is, if you have a fourth grade reading level, you can spend about 10 minutes and read the documents that they are actually pointing to and talking about and see that they do not say what they say. It's not a matter of like, well, they literally don't say that. And it's just sort of remarkable the way that the whole kind of media enabling machine around them has picked this up and just dutifully followed the talking points. And it doesn't matter that what they're saying is demonstrably false. It's that they're saying it. And they're like you said, Ben, hitting the Russia, Russia, Russia button. And people just kind of click and respond to it. And then the followers know what to do. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, and it's to me like the Trump ethos and the sort of ethos of the intelligence community are like polar opposite. Like in the intelligence business, you have to nail everything down and prove everything, and like if and the Trump administration, it's like reality is what you say it is. And culturally the two have been just completely on a collision course from the beginning, and the Russia thing is completely indicative of that. And his just brutal um you know discrediting of the intelligence community is, I think it's both a strategy because you always the intelligence community is sort of the keepers of knowledge and are the experts, and so in an authoritarian project you always want to discredit the experts so that you can control the narrative. But it's also just like, I think he really just hates our guts, if I can say our, because we're just like completely his alter ego in terms of ethos and the MAGA project.
He's
Yeah,
also
I think that's exactly right. That there's a Trump likes the idea of intelligence community and FBI as a kind of set of shock troops for him, and he finds it very frustrating that they're not that. And if you had discipline as Trump, you would set up a long-term process to change that. But he doesn't do it that way. He tries to do it by sort of shock therapy. And that is, well, its long-term effectiveness remains to be seen, but it is certainly causes massive friction and culture clash. Shane, we are going to leave it there. You're a great American sitting through not just my singing, but Holly's heretical cactus narrative. We're going to be back tomorrow, folks. We're going to be, Minna Olander says she's going to be with us much of the week, which I'm very excited about. We've got some other cool things planned. But on any given day, I never know who's going to be here except you and me and some other people sometimes. See you later.
Bye.